Welcome to Comptroller's Corner. I'm your host, Pat Curry, joined as always by Buffalo Comptroller Mark Schroeder. Our top story today, an audit performed by Comptroller Schroeder found that the city of Buffalo was in violation of both federal and state law, including the Affordable Care Act, oftenly known as Obamacare. This audit was related to the benefits that were offered to city employees, or more precisely, that weren't offered to city employees. Now, Mark, I'm sure if you asked the mayor or any of the councilmen, they would all say that they support Obamacare and any effort by the president to take Obamacare away. But what they don't often say is that the city is not even in isn't even in compliance with Obamacare as far as the way it treats its employees. And in fact, many of these employees, there's about 400 seasonal employees that the city deems seasonal or part-time, and what they found is that the government, your audit found that the federal government doesn't consider these employees part-time or seasonal. They consider them full-time employees. Any employee that works over 30 hours a week or a certain number of hours a year is entitled to be offered this health insurance and also pension benefits, we'll get into a little bit later. But the city's not in compliance with this law, and it could be facing stiff penalties from the federal government.
So they don't have the authority either to do what they did. But let's just stay from the beginning. So when we conducted this audit, we do what we always do, Patrick. We set audit objectives. It's not a secret. We're very clear about it. We made it clear to the Commissioner of HR that here were the objectives. In this particular case, one of the first things we are looking for to see if they have written procedures. Basic stuff, right? Well, guess what? They don't. And so as we continued, there were 5 other bulletin points set up within the objectives that we set. And then we do our work. The auditors will then do their work. So you set up your plan, and then you work your plan. And that's exactly what we did. And then when you get to the audit findings, it is troubling to me that they're not in compliance with Section 45 of the New York State Retirement and Social Security laws of 1986, of which you mentioned in the beginning. So they're in violation of state and federal law. That is a problem. Why? Why are they doing it? Well, probably because they think they can cut corners and maybe they can save some money for the city of Buffalo, I guess would be the reason, unless they're just inept and they don't know what to do. So I don't know yet. But it's troubling because there are penalties involved as well if they don't comply. So it's a troubling situation right now.
Now, really, there's 2 components to this. One is the federal aspect, Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, and the health insurance that should be offered to these employees and currently is not, we found in many cases. And then the New York State pension membership, which should be offered to employees and in many cases is not. I just want to talk first about the health insurance aspect because it's a very important issue, and many people, if they don't have employment or if their employers don't offer insurance, they're forced to look at the market and pay out of pocket for these health insurance coverage that they want. But the city of Buffalo, the problem is they're treating these, what the federal government considers full-time employees like part-time employees or seasonal employees. But the federal government doesn't consider them that. They consider them full-time employees, and they should be offered health insurance. And what the federal government says that if one of your employees is not offered this health insurance and they go on the market and that they buy it and it's subsidized by federal taxpayers, that the city could be hit with significant penalties. And the overall sense that the city really should be offering health insurance to employees because it's required under law.
So you know what do you think the answer is? Is the answer that the city of Buffalo really didn't know this? Or are they just complicit and they're not paying attention because it doesn't suit them? That is why I believe it makes sense to have an independent fiscal officer, which is me, elected separately. I'm not a part of the mayor's cabinet, and we look at these things. We look at these things because, number one, it's the right thing to do to offer employees what they deserve. And number two, the consequence of not doing it could cause penalties or subsequent things that would be really detrimental to the city of Buffalo. And so when we conducted the audit, not only did we let them know what the objectives were, and then afterwards we showed them the findings. But what's interesting to me, Patrick, and this happens almost every time, the commissioner's response, because we give them an opportunity to respond, the commissioner's response was almost lengthier than what our whole audit was. There were 4 or 5 pages that came back, and the commissioner of HR agrees with everything that we said. So here's what's interesting. One of the things that we started some time ago is what we call anniversary audits. And so we will come back to this, especially when they say that, especially when they're in violation of state and federal law. We will look at this a little bit closer, but they can say anything, really, that they agree with us. Okay, so that's what they've said. They agree totally with us. Everything that we've said, every finding that we identified, they agree with. But now they have to do something about it. And we are watching to make sure that they do it. For 2 reasons. One is because it's the right thing for our city employees. Right now they're being cheated. And number 2, we don't want to cheat the government because there could be penalties involved to us.
Now, one of the things when this audit was going through the process was, there was some sort of weighing between, the cost of offering this coverage to employees and then the penalties that could result for not offering it. But the thing that you think is overlooked is that, when you pay a penalty, you're not getting anything and you're not providing anything to anybody.
Yeah.
You're just losing money.
Yeah.
But if you were to offer this coverage to your employees, who in many cases are, in all intents and purposes, full-time employees, considered full-time employees by the federal government, at least when you're giving them insurance and you're paying towards that, you're providing a benefit to the employee who oftentimes is on the lower end of the wage scale, oftentimes has a family to support and to provide health insurance to, and at least the city would be getting something for the money rather than just a penalty where they would absolutely get nothing out of it and their employees would still be sitting there with no coverage.
So this is an important audit. It's historical in one sense, in that we have now revealed to the citizens of Buffalo what has taken place. Now, the city of Buffalo can fix this easily. The administration, the mayor, and his commissioners can fix this easily, or they can persist in doing things incorrectly. But the great thing now is that we have it out there in the public. This is a public audit. We have it on our website. Everybody knows about it. And even if there was a change in the comptroller's office, new comptroller, new city auditor, the fact is, because of the technology these days, the next comptroller or the next city auditor coming in could tell that in 2017-18 we did this audit, and it's always worth doing again, especially when there's possible penalties involved from the federal and state government.
Now, we talked about the health insurance. I wanted a little talk about the state pension system. Now, every full-time employee is mandated to be a part of the state pension system, and these seasonal or part-time employees, it's mandated the city offer them membership into the retirement system. They don't always have to take the city up on that offer. They don't have to become a member of the pension system, but in order for that to be determined, they have to sign a waiver saying, I don't want to be part of the pension system, and they have to sign that and give it to the city. Now, what your audit found was that, we looked at about a quarter of the seasonal employees, and almost half of those employees, there was no documentation saying that they didn't want to be members of the pension system, which makes you doubt whether they were even offered membership in the system in the first place.
Yeah, they weren't, and to me, it's clear. And so again, we have identified this, and now the administration and the Common Council, they need to be aware that this is incorrect, and they need to correct it. This is what happens when you're a policymaker. When you're the mayor or when you're a council member, you are a policy maker. And so they now have to make sure they implement the policies, in this particular case, that were put forth by the federal government and the New York State retirement system, and they have an obligation to do it. And so I'm pretty confident that as long as we keep watching them, that they'll do it.
Now, this audit reminded you of a few years ago when the city hired some cell block attendants, but then they hired them and they started working, but then they wanted to change their hire date till after they started working so that they could put them into different tiers so they could save some money on pension costs. So it's just something that, that obviously was a violation of law, but it shows a pattern of behavior where the city is basically shortchanging its own employees and affecting their benefits, affecting their retirement, in order to rig the system and cut corners and save a nickel and dime here or there.
Yeah, but see, Patrick, this is where the mayor has to raise his hand and take full responsibility for those types of things, and he has to make it clear to his commissioners and to the people who are running these departments that it is important to respect federal and state law. It's important to respect the Buffalo City Charter. It's important to respect the codes that are involved with the city of Buffalo. I mean, just last week I went through Chapter 16, Finance Law. I wanted to go through it all just to make sure that we, in audit and control, when we're faced to do things differently because of technology, I go right back to the code book, Finance Law, Chapter 16. Are we doing everything by the book? That's my responsibility. It's the mayor's responsibility, and it's the responsibility of the commissioners and the executive directors that he hires. And when they, on purpose, go against the law, then that is a bigger problem than any audit.
So you said you're going to look at this in about a year, and the department involved said all the right things in the letter, said they're going to comply, but really the proof is in the pudding. And when you look back at this next year at this time, you're going to be seeing, you're going to do the same testing that you did of these employees, see if they're being offered the health insurance, see if they're being offered membership into the pension system, and see if they have the documentation in order to back that up.
Yeah, this is a critical audit so that we probably will not wait a year. There have been times where the city auditor on his own has done an audit maybe 3 months or 6 months because of the critical nature of what our findings were.
And another thing to remember about this audit is that basically you want to make sure that not only is the city of Buffalo in compliance with state and federal law, but that it's treating its employees properly. And this is one of the things that you've pointed out, is that treating full-time employees like they're seasonal or they're part-time has a negative effect on that employee's his benefits, his pay, and the dignity of work. And in order for all boats to rise, the city should be doing its part. It's to go out there and say that all employees of McDonald's should be making $15 an hour. But when you're in charge of a certain amount of employees and they're making less than that, they're not offered the coverage that's required by law. There's something that the city can do on its own with its own employees. Rather than looking outside its area and to other places like Manhattan. And advocating for better conditions for its workers there. Yep.
So this audit was rather narrow in terms of what we were trying to accomplish, right? But if you really look at it wider, like I do, many times the administration, they use the seasonal employees to their advantage. And the seasonal employees do not become permanent employees unless they do A, B, C, and D. And the A, B, C, and D are all in the column of politics, doing this and doing that and giving money to the political candidates who are running, policymakers, because I do not allow it. I do not. Not one time have I solicited any employee that works for me for the last 6 years that I've been the Buffalo City Comptroller. That is not what the mayor and the council members do. They go the complete opposite. And so this is a lot wider than what we're showing, but for now we're going to stay narrow, and I just want to be out of the way of the federal government and the state government, and I want to make sure the city of Buffalo is in full compliance, and that's what we're going to look at. But there's more problems within the administration in the way that they treat people and the way that they treat employees, and it's wrong.
Thanks, Mark. Well, we got to take a brief break.
Okay.
Stay tuned for more Comptroller's Corner after this message.
So what happened with Troy?
No, it's all about Gerard.
Hey, D.
Hey, Julie, what's up?
So
I was wondering if you could help me with that home ec project.
So what's the project? How to make white bread?
Why doesn't she ask one of her other friends?
Yeah. Why don't you just leave?
Sorry.
Why you gotta be like that? Julie.
Imagine the power of one voice. Find yours at freedomcenter.org.
Hi, welcome back to Comptroller's Corner. I'm your host, Pat Curry, joined, as always, by Buffalo Comptroller Mark Schroeder. And we talked about in Comptroller's Corner in previous episodes that the city needed $35 million in reserves to fill the budget hole in its budget. Now, that has caused some alarm with the rating agencies. Now, these big three rating agencies are Moody's, Standard & Poor, and Fitch. And when they saw how much money the city needed to plug its budget holes, they got concerned. And they contacted Comptroller Schroeder and want to know some more details about this. Now, Mark, you're going to be sitting down with two of these rating agencies tomorrow, this week, and they're concerned about the city's fiscal outlook and especially the decrease in fund balance that resulted from using so much of reserves to fill the budget hole in the city of Buffalo, $35 million this past year. So you're going to have to explain to these rating agencies what happened and, what the city can do to fix this.
Yeah. So this is the first time this has happened since I've been the Buffalo City Comptroller, 6 years now, that this is actually called a surveillance report that the
it's never good when you're under surveillance. In any case,
it's never good when you're under surveillance, and this is really what this is. This is going to be like an inquisition, and so as always, I have in the room on this conference call with the rating agencies this week. I will have somebody from the mayor's cabinet, the commissioner of finance, and then we'll have the CEO of the COO of the Buffalo Board of Education, and some management people within my office and our financial advisor, and we will have this conversation with the rating agencies. But it all boils down to what you said. They are alarmed. Last year, the mayor said in writing that he was only going to use $10 million in fund balance. They essentially used $35 million, leaving us with nearly nothing left. That's a problem. And so now the mayor and the administration now has created a cash flow situation. These rating agencies are very, very smart, and they're with it. So we're going to hit it front on tomorrow. We're going to talk about all of these things, but most importantly, the administration, the Commissioner of Finance, will have an opportunity to talk about what they're going to do differently going forward to stop this. I had the opportunity several weeks ago when I was looking at just the balance sheet of the city of Buffalo to do what is called a RAN, a revenue anticipation note. That would be to go out and to borrow money to help us pay our bills through this fiscal year.
That'd be like paying your utility bills with a credit card, essentially.
That would be most alarming to the credit agencies. Now, some cities like Albany, Rochester, Syracuse, they do it as a matter of fact. But if Buffalo were to do it, it would be shocking. because of the amount of fund balance that we've had. And now the city has allowed it, the mayor and the administration has allowed it to dwindle down, and it's problematic. And so now we have to have this conversation, and we will have it, and I feel very, very confident that we can get through it. If we don't get through it, here's the consequence that the city of Buffalo, citizens, employees, anybody who has a stake in the city of Buffalo, they need to understand that in the BFSA Act, the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority Act of 2003, amended in 2004, there are 4 factors in there, A, B, C, and D. If we are unable to do any of those factors, A, B, C, and D, then the control board goes from soft to hard. Then the elected officials in City Hall are useless, because then the control board runs everything. And so there's a lot at stake here, Patrick. There's a lot at stake here tomorrow, and we are going to have a very candid conversation with the rating agencies, and the mayor and his administration are going to have an opportunity over the next 6 months to do something about this trend of using Buffalo savings to balance the budget.
And what they've said in previous reports is, it's great all the investment New York State has made in improving the economy, everything that Googles have done in reshaping downtown, the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus, all the progress they've made. The medical school, Children's Hospital just opened this past year. Now, all those things are great on the economy side, the demographics and the income of the of the people that live here. But on the city of Buffalo, the way it handles its finances, every single year, all 3 rating agencies said you don't have a structurally balanced budget. Your revenues aren't keeping pace with expenditures. You're dipping into your savings and using it to fill budget holes. Yeah. And that's a recipe for disaster, and it's unsustainable. Now we're at the point where it's becoming unsustained because we're finally running out of that fund balance. And you mentioned that that the city could be borrowing money. The city used to be in the position where we would lend other municipalities money for their revenue shortfalls, and now we're on the flip side where we might have to go to the bank for another loan just to pay our bills.
The point that you made a few minutes ago about the structurally balanced budget, that is one of the factors in the A, B, C, and D in the BFSA Act, that if it isn't, it could revert back to a control board to go from soft to hard. So it's problematic. But let me just be fair. Let me be clear about this. This is a difficult time we're in right now. We can fix it. And I have confidence that the mayor and the council members understand, because we've gone through a lot of work in explaining this. We've had council members in my office talking to them about this. I feel very confident that the mayor and the council members are aware that we are at a critical point in time, and things have been pretty good financially over the last 6 years for a lot of different factors. But keep in mind, there's no big brother coming to the rescue of the city of Buffalo this year, like in the past years. The state of New York has a $4.2 billion, that's with a B, $4.2 billion potential deficit this year. There's not going to be a lot of money floating to Buffalo to get us out of this situation. Discipline. We have to have the will and the discipline. The mayor has to have the will and the discipline, and the council members to do better, especially when we've set off the alarm of what's happening to the city of Buffalo financially.
And part of that comes at budget time, and as far as ensuring the revenues are there to meet expenditures, but also making sure those revenues are realistic. Now, Standard & Poor's contacted us because Parking Commissioner Helfer said in a media report that, well, even though the city had $8 million budgeted for land sales and they only got $1 million, that the rest of that money was just delayed, that there was somehow $7 million out there. Yeah. And it was just delayed, even though it was 6 months past the end of the fiscal year. And, Standard & Poor's asked, well, it's delayed. Did that close yet? And there's been no answer from the administration on that. So basically, not only is the realistic. Not only has this budget line been unrealistic, but then when you go out there in the media and misrepresent that there's a $7 million out there just waiting to get closed on, like you're closing on a house.
Yeah.
The idea that no one would ask a follow-up question is troubling to you.
Yeah, well,
if
it's
it weren't
troubling,
comical.
but a bold-faced lie is more troubling to me, because a bold-faced lie, you're never going to answer it. You're going to keep lying more. And that's a problem, and that's going to stop. I've been very clear to the mayor. I communicate with the mayor weekly now, and I will continue to communicate with him weekly so that he is aware, coming from me, that we continue to have cash flow problems, and it's not going to stop, Mr. Mayor, Common Council members, until you do something about it. I'm just counting. I'm not a policymaker. They are. And I'm recommending, just like we did in the audit that we talked about previously, we make recommendations, and I have made several recommendations to the elected officials who are policymakers that the time has come. Right now, we have to do better, or there are severe consequences to the city of Buffalo.
Now, Mark, you've been out and about in the community. Tell us a little bit about the community events you've attended.
So being a citywide elected official, I make it a point to go everywhere across the city. So there's a few places that I've been. Recently, I went to the beautiful Oshai Children's Hospital. I went to visit a young man, Nathan Waldron. He's doing just fine. But when I was in that hospital, it was just breathtaking. It's gorgeous. It's really very nice. And on the elevators, I remember taking pictures because they have mission statement, vision statement, values, and we have all of those statements in the Comptroller's office. So it was just a great experience. And then a couple of weeks ago, you joined me. We went to St. Joseph's University School on Main Street, and we were invited by Lynn Rezabek. She's the music teacher there. And I was invited by a fifth grader, Maggie Hassett, to go to her class and to talk about government and politics. But while we're at St. Joseph's University, I was given an opportunity to portray the governor, DeWitt Clinton, from the time period of 1817 to 1825. And DeWitt Clinton is known as the father of the Erie Canal. You joined me in full costume, and you were the Lieutenant Governor Erastus Root. And so we just had a wonderful time. But I was so impressed with the children that they knew so much about the Erie Canal. And then at the end, they did a musical tribute, and they sang the Erie Canal song, which was just fabulous. So that was very, very enjoyable. Last weekend, I ran a race, the Lockport 10, the roughest race in Western New York, and I can assure you it is. That was something that was great fun. And then this week, I spent a lot of time with the deaf community. I have my entire life, and I'm on the board of Deaf Access Services. And the main objective, Patrick, is to really help the deaf community to get employment. And so there are certain things that I do and that I'm helpful with this board, especially being the Comptroller. There are many times they put me on their finance committee, so I'm able to help them, get a clear direction on which way to go. So it's been a busy couple of months in the new year, but I'm looking forward to continue visiting across the city of Buffalo and seeing great people who do great things for our entire community.
Well, Mark, that's all the time we have for Comptroller's Corner. Thanks
you.
for joining us.
Thanks, Pat.
And thanks for joining us at home. Make sure to check out the Comptroller's website, our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, and our Twitter handle. On behalf of Mark Schroeder, this is Pat Curry, signing off.